Namaste. Welcome to my podcast. All right. Before we get on with today's podcast, I have to address a specific issue. This has something to do with what happened after my last podcast with Nupur. There was a particular set of people who had a problem with the podcast and what both of us had supposedly spoken about on the podcast without even completely listening to it. Now, under normal circumstances, I won't even speak about such issues, but I'm using this case to explain something larger and something deeper about what I feel is wrong in our online discourse. Now, many of you might think this is, find this is shocking, but I disagree on many things when it comes to the points that my guests share on the podcast. But that does not mean I will start cutting my guests off and start yelling at them and converting a healthy exchange of ideas into a shouting match. I'm sorry, this is not a 9 o'clock news debate where people come with their boxing gloves on. I'm here to have meaningful discussions with people. It does not matter if I agree with them on each and every statement that they make. The podcast is not about what I think. The podcast is about what they think about specific issues. Yes, I will ask them questions which I feel need to be asked, and sometimes I might even share my disagreement. I once again want to emphasize why I am doing this. My aim is simple. I want to create an atmosphere of sensible discussions. I may not agree with everything my guests say, but it does not mean I cannot converse with them. Also, my biggest worry is that people on all sides are living in ideological echo chambers. We are slowly becoming people who are incapable of digesting disagreement. In short, we are becoming Abrahamized. The reason I am a Hindu, in spite of seeing no divinity or sacredness in things, is because of its inbuilt openness and plurality. But I sincerely feel that the entire online discourse is full of anger, but very little substance. And my whole aim is to find people who I believe have substance and make them explain their points in a more detailed manner. Anyways, enough of what I think. Hope you guys take my point in a positive spirit. I'm trying to have an honest and open discussion with people whom I have genuine hope of. And my guest today is yet another such person. So without further ado, I present to you Amrita Bhinder. Hi Amrita, how are you?
Kushal, thank you. Oh, wow, what a lovely introduction. You have high hopes. So I hope I can live up to some slight saying that I have some things to offer which are not shallow. Let's see.
I'm an eternal optimist, and let's just say I'm really happy that we connected on Twitter because I'm on a mission. See, what happened after that Manu Joseph article was I was really angry. I was not angry about what he said per se or what he thinks per se, but I was angry about this caricaturing. यहाँ पे एक तमाशा लगा के रखा गया है कि जितनी भी औरतें हैं जो all the women, I'm saying all the women who support the BJP or who support Modi nowadays, there is this support Modi thing. They are caricatured into these, weirdos who have no brains, and I find that so offensive. I mean, we have some really strong women online who have a point of view, who want to share things. So I'm really thankful to you that you agreed to do this. I mean every word of it.
Kushal, I'll thank you actually in return for giving me an opportunity to speak my mind. And as far as Manu's article is concerned, I think doesn't matter. Let's just get past that because that's his take. I think it exposed his biases and his way of understanding what right-wing represents, what right-wing women who, and the tag comes because they like the Prime Minister. He believes that this is probably how these people are inclined towards supporting Narendra Modi. So I don't want to worry about how he is because I think people are sensible enough to understand both parties. So even though I may not look like the best person in that article, but in the long term, for example, you are giving me a chance to speak, and Yogini gave me a chance to put my view across, and Shefali actually wrote an article taking on Manu. So the traction he gave us and I am specifically quite voiceless because I am not a celebrity of any sort. So, thanks to him, I've got an opportunity to speak on whatever you may ask me on why I like the Prime Minister and am I a BJP supporter and some such stuff.
Okay, good. Now let's start with that. So why don't we start with you tell the listeners a bit about your background and why did you start supporting BJP? I'll give you a background of why I asked this question to every supporter of BJP or Narendra Modi because unlike Congress, BJP has a wider support base. So let's take myself for an example. I am someone who supports BJP not ideologically per se, but yeah, politically, I'm very much inclined to the BJP. But there are some people who just vote for the BJPs because they passionately hate Congress. So there is a huge, plethora of people who just basically support BJP for that. So why don't you tell the listeners a bit first a bit about yourself and then what got you into supporting BJP?
Kushal, I am 39 years old. I have taken a sabbatical for the last 2 years. I was heading legal, I was heading indirect tax for a conglomerate, an American company. And I have had good insight into litigation. So for me, I started off with Supreme Court as a junior advocate to senior advocates. And I don't want to name any of them because I don't know if anybody is comfortable being named. That was my initial entry into legal practice. So I went and I started off on tax. So when I say tax, it's basically indirect tax. So you got excise, customs, service tax, VAT. And I would assist the senior advocates. And as a junior to a senior advocate in Supreme Court, basically it's a very privileged position because you get to observe the best that the legal fraternity has to offer in practice and play out before you in court, and that gives you great learning. And and you're a very young person, so you're like a sponge. So you are just picking up on everything that plays out to you at an apex court level. And people would say it's a good idea to start from lower judiciary and work your way up to Supreme Court. But because of my experience, I believe that if you were to get an opportunity where you see top down, your fundas are very clear. When I say fundas, I mean fundamentals. Your grounding is very clear on once finally plays out and what will win you your case at your apex level. So after when you're assisting a senior advocate, then I wanted to actually start arguing my own matters, and I had an option of would you want to now start with because I was in tax, that would you want to go and start representing companies before the bureaucrats, the IRS, the commissioner level. And I thought that maybe it's a good idea first to get into drafting and then shift on to consultancy. So I joined one of the big four. I was in Ernst & Young for a while. And from Ernst & Young, I then shifted on to the industry. So my experience has got everything that a person can pick up, right from business to consultancy to litigation. And I was lucky because I only have about, I think, my maths is for a person who's a tax lawyer. So I passed out 2003 and I was on working till about 2015. And so about 15 years of experience. And I interned all through 2000s. So I have some experience to say that I'm comfortable in taxation, understanding the Constitution of India, understanding some basic stuff. My father is from the armed forces, and I'm an only child. And I've been mollycoddled, and I've been my parents' focus. And army background, you're not a political person. Okay, so in your family, there are no politics discussed over dinner or any such thing. But we are also people that who are very aware, be it politically aware or where your country is, and because you're stationed in places in cantonments which could, there's not much to offer in how kids are today going to cinemas. We have our own little cinemas, so we are really caught up in reading up. So you can go to your libraries. You have very good subscriptions that you take. So you're an aware person. Normally, you will find that army kids are pretty aware of what's happening in the world, and of course, the nation. And my shift to Prime Minister Modi has a lot to do with my army background. Though nothing was discussed at home, but that's not to say that I didn't know what was happening when it came to the armed forces. And if you see how Congress has, the Indian National Congress has treated the forces, you suspected that there was something which always undermines the armed forces as compared to the bureaucratic setup. And there was talk off and on in places about how the armed forces, the pay band was put under the bureaucrats. And this is after we won the 1971 war. And this is a glorious victory. And then you see around 73, I think. I'm not very good with dates, but I think around that time is when you find that the pay commission actually downgraded the armed forces, and then the pay bands are put below of what they were at, and in comparison to the bureaucrat. And if you look at, so I'm going to jump years now. So for example, if you look at General V.K. Singh's controversy of when he was the chief and when he exited and retired, there was this whole talk about, he had actually written to the Prime Minister at that time that the armed forces need equipment and replenishment. And that letter got leaked out to the media, and the media went ballistic for the longest time, discussing how and why would a letter get leaked out and what is the motivation. And nobody asked a very valid question, and the question that was plaguing the armed forces, that what's the content of the letter? So when a chief at that time is saying that your services need equipment and they need supplies, and he's the chief, and let me tell you that when a chief is exiting, for him to say that these are our shortages is actually he's taking on some onus on himself to say that we are at a place which needs help. That just goes to show that why you and why didn't the other chiefs, or what happened under your thing that you would believe that there is such a need. Because in normal course of things, the system takes care of your replenishments and your needs. Why would you have to write this letter? So it also reflects on him when he writes that, and if a person is willing to risk it by taking the onus on himself that we need these, we need the armed forces in a better health. So, one second, so General V.K. Singh's play out is actually very akin to what happened to General Thimaya. And there is this whole, I think there is this person who's written this book. His name is Kushalmehra, I think. His book is now out, and it's very exhaustive, very well researched, and there are so many things that are quoted out, and a lot of things have been put together, which gives you a little bit of a perspective, which you always somewhere had, you suspected was happening to the forces. Now, in this case, what happens with General Thimaya is that this is during the Indo-China war, and India lost that war, and it was a bit of a fiasco, so to say, and that was because the war preparedness of the Indian army was not up to the mark, and a major brunt of that was borne with the blame to the forces, but the forces were not well equipped to take on China, and at that time the defense minister, I think it was Mr. Menon, Krishna Menon, and our then Prime Minister Pandit Nehru. Amazingly, they have this deep-seated paranoia where they would believe that the armed forces should be slightly at bay and the bureaucracy should be more at play. And for example, so the Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru actually announced in the parliament that the then Arunachal Pradesh would be put under the armed forces, under army, and
Right.
and General Timaya actually said this was very arbitrarily decided by you, because China goes out of its way to say that it is not looking at a war and covers up by saying that the border is by border force. But if you put Arunachal Pradesh under the armed forces, then they'll see us as an aggressor. Now you look at the back history for a bit, okay? I think Pandit Nehru, Jawaharlal Nehru said back in 1928 at a Kerala conference, and he actually said that India doesn't need to worry about problems from external or our neighbors. So there's no, for some reason he believed that there is no reason to worry about war preparedness. Then he goes on to, that I think it is General Cārvāka when China invades Tibet, where he says that, we need to be looking at, worrying slightly about China, we need to now put our forces and worry about our arms and ammunition. And so you had a 10-year period since 1950 to 62, and nothing was done. And then General Timaya is embarrassed with the lack of preparedness that we were at that time. And you wanted him to manage Arunachal Pradesh with no additional resources or anything given to the armed forces. So there were these operational issues that they had and not taken care of by the political setup. So there seems to be some fear that the Indian National Congress had, which is, and this is not to say that this is outside of Subhash Chandra Bose and Patel. This is more to do with Gandhiji and Nehru's way of looking at things. So it's not that this was lost on a person who's from the armed forces. I mean, my whole life has been in the armed forces, and I mean, I'm not a person who is an analytical person or a historian or any of that. It's just that you're slightly read up, and these things are known, and they just fall into place for you if you're looking at it from your perspective. In this case, for me, the armed forces. And if you
So
look at how, yeah.
So I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask you. So basically, what you're trying to say is if the probabilities of someone, if they are from the armed forces and if they have read the right material, although I believe there are a few people in the armed forces who do support the Congress. I don't know why. In fact, it's fascinating. Why do they support the Congress? Because the way you've come across in this point of view is basically Congress has botched up pretty much everything that has got to do with the armed forces, and anybody who reads the material over there, their chances of supporting Congress are pretty low.
Yeah, so I don't know why people would believe that. I think it's about a sense of a disbelief that you cannot acknowledge that your own government and power would willfully not look out for the nation's interest, and which may be true. So whether it was oversight, whether it was collusion, we don't know. I mean, we are in 2017. I am nobody to try and get into why that happened, but it did happen. Now, and you did lose the war in 62 very badly. And then you are looking at wars with Pakistan uh, uh, many a times. And what plays out after that is also no great things for the armed forces. I mean, post 71, which you won, I mean, you downgrade the armed forces. So it's not logical. And to believe
Well,
that you are.
you don't expect logic from Congress.
Yeah, so and I don't now. Honestly, I don't. I mean, you believe that there's nothing coming your way, and then you had to eat your own words when the tribal forces actually invaded Kashmir. So come on. I mean, which false of paradise were you living in? I mean, you're the prime minister. So how can it come as a surprise? So, anyways, that said, so that's I believe that when BJP was in power then, and the BJP in power now has, and as far as BJP, I have discovered ideologically I support it. Okay, and when I say ideology, it somebody can say it's a religious ideology. For me, the prime minister seems to be a person of an ideology which is nation first, outside of caste and outside of your religion, outside of a communal angle. It's about nation first. So nation is a multitude of things. You've got your internal security, you've got your external security, you've got your foreign affairs, you've got your economy, you've got your rural areas. I mean, it's endless, the list. And if you see he wants to address everything. So it's a very nation first, and I'm ideologically with Prime Minister Modi, and for that reason with the BJP.
Okay, so now that we've cleared that point, I want to go into the second question about were you so I guess now it's something to do with social media. So how did you get on social media, and what is your view on social media? Obviously, I shared my views in the beginning, which were not very pleasant. But yeah, so what do you think? Do you think social media is good or bad, and what has it meant to you personally?
I believe social media is here to stay. Okay, and people are having a problem with it, then that's their problem with adapting. It's here to stay whether you like it or you don't. Personally, I like it. I'm not a person who. I don't believe that living in isolation is a good idea and you will avoid problems. For me, there is a way to control and contain an issue. For example, if you're talking about Twitter or Facebook, if somebody is annoying you, then mute them. I mean, if they're really annoying you, block them. So it's no big deal, but it's like everybody's got such emotional issues right now that how dare somebody say something which was so demeaning. Well, block the person. What's the big deal?
I'll give you a very basic example. Let's say you and I are having this conversation. Now, if we were having this same conversation where you explained the point about the armed forces, let's say in 12 to 13 minutes, if you would have done this over a Twitter thread, I can guarantee you your timeline would have become cancer.
I block. I'm not a
No,
person.
not.
Oh, I don't care. I'll tell you honestly, Kushal, I am not a person who's looking to engage beyond a point, and you can't troll me because I'm not emotionally invested in anybody. Okay, I don't know this person. I don't know who they are, or some random DPs. If there's a friend of mine who's trying to say, I'll say, take it offline. What do you want to talk about? Okay, so it's not going to. For me, it doesn't bother me. I have zero
That's
issues.
good to hear. So that's good to hear. I can troll you on Twitter then.
Go for it. I'll come back with gifs. I myself am quite a troll.
Okay, now you just mentioned in the beginning that you were a lawyer who was dealing in indirect taxes. Now this is very important for me. I'll tell you why it's important for me. So I'm an entrepreneur, and if there is one thing that I hate in this country, it is the babudam.
Uh,
And you're someone who is a lawyer, so you have a very different perspective. Now we as businessmen in India are tortured. So what was your experience on dealing with this whole structure of indirect taxes? And I'm more interested about that, and I also want you to tell the listeners about what's your view on GST, by the way.
okay. Okay, so now I'll start off with a disclaimer that I've been out of this for the last 2 years and I've been on a sabbatical and I'm very busy on Twitter talking rubbish. So I'm slightly outdated. But I mean, you can't take away my experience from me, so I can offer you some insight here. Now, as far as my take is that, as a lawyer and I am in tax, and I have to confess here that I did not have taxes as a subject during my law school, and I didn't have
Okay.
maths and commerce during school. Okay, so this is where I am from. Do you know? I don't know how many zeros go into a crore. I have like big issues with. I suffer from in numeracy. I struggle with numbers, and I was heading that portfolio. So, but I do understand my strengths. So, and which are that I understand the basic principle of things. And
Okay.
as far as a referencing anything is concerned, it just has to be logical, and you can come to any understanding if you're a logical person. And as your numbers can be shortened by just very simply putting person on the block saying we're an American company, please come down in dollars. So I mean, I got 100 zeros happening. I had a case which was 100 crores. So when I got that show cause notice, I was like, what's going on here? I have no idea what is a contingent liability. So I very simply asked the manager saying that इसको आप उसमें लेके आओ ना American dollars में. I mean, I have to report this out. So they'll come around with ये 20 million है. So that kind of a case. So now that said, because I'm in the industry, and our first level of litigation will happen with the commissioner, and that is your
Okay.
direct face time with the bureaucracy. And for all the bureaucracy babu issue that India has, I have to confess, and I am not trying to pull wool over your eyes or mine or living in some delusion. I have had very good experiences with IRS services, especially in the indirect, especially excise and service tax. VAT
Okay.
is a different bet because it's state, and there's a that this doesn't hold true for that. Okay, this holds true for the central services and the central tax. So excise and service tax, the bureaucrats who hear your cases, I have actually won a matter before a commissioner, which was a 7 million matter, and it was. To win a 7 million matter which has been pending for the last 18 years before a commissioner is asking the commissioner somewhere to put his reputation on the line. Because if he lets go of a demand like that, there could be very well a reason to believe that he may have been corrupted or some sort of an improper payment was made out. And when a person lets go of a demand and drops it against an industry, he better have enough reasoning to not be put to scrutiny himself. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
normally what happens is that they are very honest and they'll say, why don't you take this to the tribunal? So it's a go to thing that you go to the tribunal. But in my interaction with excise and service tax guys and IRS has been brilliant. And that's also when we had a clandestine removal, which is an anti-evasion case, which was before the tribunal, and I've been locked up in a remand room. And I just said I'm diabetic, so they panicked and then tried to give me chini and all that. But the whole idea was to scare my guy and the manager and me, and we were locked up for a little bit. But if you're aware of your rights and you just say the right things, it's not so easy to scare a person unless the person's I don't know, scared themselves right at the start. I don't know. I haven't had a problem. So I'd say that uh, in this area the babus are cool.
Okay, so while I would see, here's my this. I'll again explain from where I come from. I actually see. Even I've had conversations and interactions with senior bureaucrats, and they seem to be pretty reasonable people to me. But in our world, I call it the tyranny of the field officer.
हाँ.
No,
So
जो
वो is
नीचे
another
वाला
level.
आदमी होता है,
Oh,
वो
you're
वाला
another
जो
bunch.
आदमी होता है.
So see, I'll tell you, I'm a woman, okay? So I know my rights and I use them to my advantage. So a guy talking to me, I was like, औरत कहाँ है? 8 बजे के बाद आए हो, and like things like that. You're spinning circles around that guy. But the guy who's the first person who comes to you and who's doing the investigation, yeah, that's a different guy. For example, the person who manages the excise, who was under me, was the manager at that time, and he and this guy actually got into a fight. So they were at each other's collars, and they wanted to beat each other up and things. And then this guy was called over to the commissioner, and before the commissioner, he wanted to have a go at the other guy. So it's actually fun to see Bollywood type things play out before you, and so it's actually quite cool because as far as a woman, they don't beyond a point they don't worry. I mean, you can tell them that you're going to get into trouble if you even thought about anything. But for a guy, it's still, some egos get involved, and if you take it to heart and you want to tell him कि तूने कैसे मेरे को बोला और तूने कैसे किया, and that guy is going to also they're very chalak, huh? So they're always trying to catch you on the wrong foot, and if you're a person who can get baited, well then yes, good luck, because if they're baiting you, they have the law on their side. But if you're a cool person, it's difficult.
Okay, now you just raised the point about how the babudam changes its tone when they're dealing with with the other gender, as I was
You make them change that tone. No. There she was आप assessee है, आपने नहीं दिया, आप अपना मतलब let me show you your place. Then you tell them that मैं औरत हूँ and I'm very aware of my rights and you better be careful. So then the tone changes.
चलो अच्छा है, किसी को तो अपने राइट्स मालूम है इस देश में. बाकी हमारे देश की सबसे बड़ी समस्या है कि बाबू बहुत ज़्यादा राइट्स छुपाता है और पब्लिक को राइट्स कुछ मालूम ही नहीं है.
Actually, I use this to tell our HR and our amazingly, our indirect taxes under the legal. Normally, it's under the finance department, under the CFO. So I told the CFO that you may want to include more women because at times of issues, औरत को आगे कर दो, especially the younger, the more. The least she's going to give out and the more she's aware of her rights, they don't want to get into that area. So it was an HR point also for hiring कि finance department में औरतें ले लो.
नहीं, वो हमारे देश में क्या होता है ना, अगर एक तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली आई मीन when suddenly men come across strong women ना, क्या होता है ना, ये क्या हो गया थोड़े उनके तोते उड़ जाते हैं. Actually it's nice to see that.
What's your advantage, by the way? Honestly, I can't be this lucky in all my years. I mean, if it's on, people say you were lucky. I was like, how can I be this lucky every time?
Okay, now I want to ask you about the moot point. I know, let's forget Manu Joseph, but this is more generic. Now, I wanted to know, what do you think about this whole, caricaturing of right-wing women? Like, everyone is typecast in a single mold. Now, let's just think about it. In the last 2 weeks, I've had conversations with, you're the third female I'm having a conversation with on my podcast. First was Anjali, second was Nupur, now it's you. Now all three of you are distinct, different human beings who have a very distinct worldview. In fact, all three of you support BJP for very different reasons, by the way, and are on the BJP camp for very different reasons. But how do you feel when there is this, एक ही जैसे हैं जी सब सारे, वो बस एक जैसा है? And how has been your experience as a BJP supporter on social media? So I'll give you my view. What I've seen is left-leaning women, and I'm not talking about the men. The women are so nasty and mean towards the non-left women. What is wrong? I always thought women were more sensible than men. But what has gone wrong here? What do you think about this whole, treatment of right-wing women?
Bhai, you find idiots on both sides of the sexes. And to believe कि औरत ज़्यादा smart है, नहीं है, पता नहीं दिल अच्छा होगा. नहीं, she'll just come to different ways of hurting or not hurting. So आदमी शायद मार देगा, औरत jealously, some other way of. But it's not to say कि कौन ज़्यादा अच्छा है कौन नहीं है. As far as the left, I'll tell you what the problem is. Okay, my computer is locked. One second. Are we still on?
That's okay. I can hear. Yeah, I can hear you. No problem.
But just give me a second. I'm distracted because of this. So,
it's okay.
So, as far as there's this very big issue that we are facing today in typecasting people. I think this helps people put up a guard in not recognizing what's before them. Because right now what has happened is that the Indian citizen and the populace in general is very polarized, and they want to believe that the polarization happened because of the prime minister. But I think it has a
Mm-hmm.
lot, a multitude of issues why people are polarized. It is because of a one-way narrative. And today, social media has given you a chance where you put up an alternative thought, and which could be fact-based, which could be opinion-based, or which could be for any other reason, and it's still there. And that can be very unnerving for a lot of people who were in command of how the masses think. Now they find that is slipping out of their hands, and they would want to believe that all the brains and all the sensibilities and all the reading up was done by this one bunch of people, okay, a selected bunch,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest, somebody in corporate, he's just an idiot in his corporate. He knows his MBA, but he doesn't understand the worldview. He doesn't understand foreign policies. Somebody who's supporting the Indian aurat who's supporting the prime minister, probably lusting after the man. The man who's supporting the prime minister is probably Hindutva driven, like a psycho sangi on the loose कि गाँव के अभी रक्षक आ रहा है वो. So मतलब chasing a truck with cattle. So they, for the life of them, don't want to acknowledge that they may just be functional brains who are looking outside of the stereotyping that you're typecasting them in, and the narrative that you thought was in place because you only mix and meet up with your own set of friends it doesn't exist anymore. Okay, and there is a lot of reading material, and people may come to their own conclusions no matter what Indian Express headline carries, or Guardian is telling you, or the Economist is really asking, or Washington Post, or any of these mainstream medias which are considered intellectual or the go-to places for an opinion. And people may form an opinion outside of that. Now look at the blasphemy of that. So they can't come to terms with this. Now, how do they deal with that? So they want to somewhere typecast you. So and that comes at their own risk. I don't know why it should bother anybody else, because it's your numbers which are off. It's you people who do these polls and then you're looking like idiots. So why are you, I mean, you're journalists and you're supposed to know where the world is headed. How come you're so off and you're not able to gauge? You're trying to control a narrative. You can't control it anymore. It's gone are those days, because no matter how much you may tell a person internet's an idiot place, it's just everybody's opinion is out there. But it's a great place for you to gather opinion, no? So, what they believe is their kryptonite could actually be their aid, but it's they're not using it to their advantage, and that's their. I mean, if I was in their place, I'd panic, because how long would I exist in this little silo I've got going? I would be worried for me if I was in their place.
I think what has happened with them is कि वही बात होती है, वो लोग आइडियोलॉजिकल एको चैम्बर्स में रहने की आदत हो गई है. इनफैक्ट आई बिलीव नाउ इट्स क्रीपिंग इनटू आवर साइड ऑल्सो. बट हमारे साइड की एक बहुत अच्छी बात है, आपस में इतना झगड़ा करते हैं तो हमेशा करेक्शन होती रहती है. तो बिसाइड्स दैट, बट
यूनिटी थोड़ी है. There is no camaraderie and I'll watch your back. Like, oh fuck, I'll just tell you what you're. So everybody has an opinion, and it is outside of the other person's opinion. It is just that the majority opinion is just going to the same place, but they're all coming from different, their own different assessments, which is not known.
Yeah.
So the Libby mind is, I call them Libbies. Okay, I'm sorry for that. The liberal person. And the liberal person is not the liberal person, because he's the most intolerant person I've ever seen. Completely, they shut you out, they block you out. They don't want to listen to what you're saying. They want to believe that if you like the prime minister, then you must be a Muslim hating person. I can't for the life of me understand how the two are connected, even if no matter how much you peddle 2002 on me. Come on, you've got to give me more than 2002 with your own narrative. Okay, because you got some rando person even if there was an RSS connection, they want to say, I've read up on RSS, I know about RSS, and it's totally misconstrued, and the way it's portrayed, it's just so off what they are. So anyway, so that's a separate discussion. And if you talk about writing, then you got to acknowledge 84. 84 doesn't bother you. You just jump chronologically and go to 2002 and believe that it all happened because of this one man. Today the world is going to the dogs because of this one man. I mean, how delusional are you guys? So
नहीं वो होता है ना. See, I'll tell you what happens.
थोड़ा homework करो, थोड़े और enemies ढूंढो, एक पे इतना hope मत peg कर दो.
नहीं, see, I'll tell you what.
They got to find more enemies. Well, they got Trump, which is fine because he's great at giving. I myself can't understand that man. But I mean, so great for you, but it's of no relevance to India beyond.
I have a confession. I am a huge Trump fan. Nothing gives me more happiness than the tweets of Donald Trump. मैं हमेशा किसी को बोलता हूँ, जब लाइफ में तुमको लगे आज मेरा दिन बहुत खराब गया है, सिर्फ डोनाल्ड ट्रम्प की टाइमलाइन पे जाओ, तुमको लगेगा अभी इससे खराब क्या हो सकता है.
हाँ, तो you and me are going to have an issue on this point because Trump, I believe, is one of those guys who I don't want to offend anybody. It's going to be blasphemous for a lot of people if I say this.
No, please offend people.
Isn't he kind of comparable to Kejriwal when he started off with this whole thing of saying what the people wanted to hear? So he's just saying what people want to hear, and then you're not, and you're so vocal and you are saying so many things. Great, yeah. So I don't want to take anything away from him. Let his time come.
No. I agree with you. That is the fun part. But वो मेरे देश में नहीं हो रहा ना, तो मुझे क्या करना है?
That's the thing. Yeah. So that I can enjoy. And by the way, I'm with you on that. Quite enjoy his.
Yeah, Trump. I like what Bill Maher says about Trump. He says he's a man-child. That's exactly what he is. He's a man-child.
Yeah. I subscribe to Man magazine, and you got to see. That's exactly what they think. Oh, all the caricaturing is he's a man-child.
So see, that's why. See. That's the whole thing. Now on to a very serious topic, and this is I want to end on this topic, and I want us to dig on this because this is something I discussed with Nupur also, and it is about the one word that has become so toxic in India, which is feminism. Now, if you ask me, when it comes to Indians, I don't think so. A lot of Indians know a lot about feminism personally. इंडिया में इतनी नॉलेज नहीं है लोगों को क्या फेमिनिज्म है, क्या फर्स्ट वेव था, क्या सेकंड वेव था, क्या थर्ड वेव था. नाउ आई एम नॉट सेइंग आई एम अ प्रोपोनेंट ऑफ फेमिनिज्म. दिस इज वेयर आई कम फ्रॉम. माय पॉइंट इज वी हैव अ प्रॉब्लम इन इंडिया. There are different degrees of problems everywhere else in the world, but I am not concerned about what's happening anywhere else in the world. I am concerned about what happens in my society. I personally believe women do get a raw deal in India, especially in the lower financial groups in India. उधर गरीब बस्तियों में जाओ, गांव में जाओ, वहाँ problem है. And when feminism per se is rejected lock, stock and barrel, I don't think so it does anyone any favors. Although I get it, when somebody reads or hears someone like Radhika Vaz, even I get irritated. I completely get it. But what is the way out of this? Now there is the Madhukishwar way, which I discussed with Nupur, which I find very interesting. And she doesn't call herself a feminist.
She's she's a hardcore feminist, and she never plays the victim. Madhukishwar.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Yeah. So what's your view?
Now, see, I'll tell you honestly, I am not a person who's followed the feminist movement right from the Marathon Boston and the person who initially also ran. And so any of that I haven't. I'm not a person on semantics. But I have to say this, that it is a bit of a man's world, and that is not to do with India. It just is. I'm so sorry for saying that, but I believe that that's somewhere.
No. You see, you don't have to be apologetic about anything. That's the whole point of about
I'm trying to say that I'm also very gender neutral. Okay, but there are such things that now just because a person is vulnerable doesn't mean that they are not important or they are weak. The word vulnerable may look as if you're weak, but a very emotionally accommodating person may be vulnerable, and then he may be a very big person in physicality. So vulnerability is not very much to do with weakness, and I think women in some place can be vulnerable for reasons of physicality. One, second is how society has played out in over the years. And as far as this is not a fault finding thing. This is about how can we positively look at making of women more empowered. I think the whole issue boils down to this one simple point: does she have a choice? Can she make her decisions on her choice? Are they hers? Is she allowed that? Or now that's where you would then find all sorts of issues come to play. Patriarchy and all these terminologies. That Papa ne kya kaha, husband ne kya kaha, or man-centric world, or school is. So a lot of people would want to say they're worried about your security and things, and I have to say that I myself am worried about my security. And I will not go out where my husband Gautam can go to places at night, and his scares are slightly different from mine. I would also be worried about being murdered. I would also be worried about being probably robbed. But the chances of me being baited more than him is because I'm slightly. As a woman, I believe that our physical strength may not meet up to no matter. There are people who believe that you could be as strong. I don't work out, yeah. And there are chances that you may be raped, and that's an additional point of worry. So these are things that go along with the territory. Now, to say that they don't exist is slightly stupid. To say that they do, but let's find a way to cope with it. Now that's forward-looking. Let's find a way to give girls, women, enough freedom and mental space to make their own choices. Okay, and at least as much as men. If men also have a lot of embargoes on them, family pressures and all that, but women have slightly more. And they may not believe this, but I am a woman, and I genuinely believe that if I was a boy, I would probably have more freedom in decision making. So that's my take. As far as people trying to all the time fault find, I think then you are not in the right direction. The idea is not to fault find. The idea is a way to collaborate. So you got to explain to people why you believe that some things need to change. You got to make them understand your perspective. And for that, he needs, women as much damage women because it's a mindset. I genuinely am very gentle, neutral when I believe that people's decision making can be based on biases, and those biases have to be without gender. I'm sorry, am I sounding cryptic? So
No,
I'm
you're not. But
very simply trying to put that women need decision-making powers in homes, in offices, in their own hearts.
यही तो समस्या है. They don't have that choice at an equal pedestal in India. Do they have
So
that?
the way, and see, आप अगर feminist बन के you're going to blame से आपको कुछ नहीं मिलने वाला.
I
And
agree.
you're
Blame
going
me.
to get into other issues where they're going to start hating you. So how is that
Yep.
in any way helping? So the idea is to get somebody to help, to collaborate. Why is there this need to put people down? I don't understand that. I find that that's the most self-destructive, and why do people do that?
Yeah, but see, this is the thing. That's how feminism has become now. I think what has happened, ये मेरा view है. Basically, the West has come a long way when it comes to treating women, right? अब और वैसे भी सोसाइटी जब इतना फाइनेंशियली प्रॉस्परस हो जाती है जितना वेस्ट हो चुकी है,
Indian
वहां पे
society
लोग वेले हो
actually
जाते
is
हैं.
quite nice.
वेले हो जाते हैं लोग.
I'll tell you, see,
No, I'm not saying India is bad. I'm not saying India is bad. But what I'm see, so my point is different. With material prosperity comes a lot of velaness.
Ah.
Now the West has become vela.
Exactly.
अब वो वेले हैं.
And there is this, what's in fashion right now, in terms of the literary circles. So feminism is on right wing, left wing, stereotyping, all that rubbish. So the more people fall into the stereotyping, the more they're removing themselves from actually addressing that problem. So, well, good luck to them. They can work their way. They will just find that they didn't actually help. So, looking at their track records, they'll find that the trajectory was not very healthy. But I don't think people measure at all what they do, and I think it's all
I,
about the movement.
no,
Abhi
I
kya chal
think
raha hai?
that, yeah, it's very sensible. I don't think so. Any kind of feminism that involves hating men and denigrating men, it's not going to go a long way.
Not at all.
And I don't care. You can call it anything. I mean, if people, in India, there is this. I don't want to use Western words. आपको जो बुलाना है उसको बुला लो.
हाँ.
As long as the fight for creating a area where both men and women have,
See,
equality of
I
choice.
believe that जहाँ पे लोगों की चांस लगती है ना वो ले लेते हैं. Okay, and the problem is that आदमियों को ज़्यादा probably chances मिली हैं, अब औरतों को मिल रही हैं. So you are just seeing that the women are very quickly catching up with the men on irritating the hell out of everybody. So जहाँ chance लगी जिसको मिली उसने ले ली. So I genuinely again gender neutral take that people are going to move out of being so negative. People have got to find a way to be nicer.
Yeah, but see, here's my thing, and again, don't take it in the wrong way. When
Huh.
you're speaking from your experience. But what about that woman in rural India? My focus is always about them. Definitely in urban India, we've come a long way. And
Oh yeah,
urban
urban
India में
India
तो
is a foolish place. Frogs in a well. इनको लगता है कि हम पता नहीं किम पाड़ है. Most brainless twits. The rural. Honestly, I tell you, because I'm from a rural background. We are farmers,
okay,
and my mother is from Punjab and my dad is from Karnal, and I'm rooted in villages. I mean, so my
okay.
mother's village and my father's village, and I've grown up on the farm, and
Hmm.
I have to say that there is this false. This gap needs to be filled where people believe that there is this rural India and urban India. You will be very surprised at the rural Indian woman, very empowered. Okay, now if you're looking at her in a unhealthy place, yes, unhealthy place, be it in an urban place, is bad. Be it in a rural place is bad. It's just bad luck. But if you think that rural society as such is lagging behind in understanding basics about women's right as compared to urban society, I think we are very off. Urban society has no clue to respecting women as rural people understand. I believe that in rural areas there's more chivalry. Today, if you ask about chivalry, it is like this is a step backwards. Why should a man be chivalrous when the woman is as empowered? So people have such silly ways of looking at good manners. They start clubbing things into stereotyping. You don't. Rural India is slightly away from trying to be in semantics, and I find that they're more genuine. I think that Indian urban are trying to just have a fancy conversation amongst friends who sounds and reads better is all. If you ask them their simple takes on life, they can't coherently have a simple take.
And
I'm so
that
sorry.
I think, and that actually is the best way to end this conversation. We diss urban people.
भाई urban भी
we
ठीक है, but I mean इतना भी don't credit yourself. Urban
so
people.
basically देखो अच्छा है पॉडकास्ट ज्यादातर सुनने वाले लोग अर्बन होंगे बाय द टाइम दे रीच द एंड ऑफ दिस कॉन्वर्सेशन दे विल बी लाइक
Don't hear it. That's
इसने
great.
हमारी धोती
I'll cover it. That's fine. That's fine.
okay so I'm grateful to you. I'm really glad we had this conversation and
So this
it's
1
good
hour
to
went by so quickly. I didn't realize I wanted to say so much about the Prime Minister and things, but that's fine. That's
yeah
cool.
we
But
can
before
we,
I
we
end
can
again,
always have one more podcast.
नहीं तू मेरे को 2 minute दे. So
Okay.
very simply, if you talk about the fiscal health of our nation, if you see a Namo app or any of these places, these are easily available infographics and everything. Under UPA, our GDP was struggling under the Prime Minister is healthier. If you look at the FDI, it's healthier. If you look at electricity across villages today, you can map it on that Gov app that you've got. If you look at Digital India, if you look at the broadband, which is just 300 kilometers under UPA is now in 2 lakh kilometers across India. If you touch any sector, any ministry, any industry, you've got a report card out, you've got comparables and measurables, which was not available to us, which was is a new phenomenon and must be acknowledged. So I'll leave
Yeah,
it at that.
yeah. And now we end this podcast.
Thank you,
Hey,
Kushal.
thanks a lot. No, I'm really, I really mean this. I'm grateful to you, and I'm glad we have had this conversation. And to the
Likewise.
people who to the people who think there is this, standard monolithic block of right-wing women, I say screw you.
Ah.
That's all I would. That's all I would like to end this podcast as. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Good night.